Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about a power struggle that is going on inside the IIM Calcutta. We also take a quick look at the statements made by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on India and China. But first, we talk about Delhi's COVID 19 situation. Just a few months ago, Delhi had been one of the worst affected cities in the country. Its COVID cases were surging, deaths were rising, and the city's healthcare infrastructure was overburdened. But now, things seem to have changed. In fact, initial findings of the latest serological survey shows that more than 50% of those surveyed have developed antibodies against COVID-19. And experts say that this indicates that the city is moving towards herd immunity. In this segment, we speak to Astha Saxena, who covers health for the Indian Express, about how Delhi is faring, what these findings mean for the city, and what experts say should be the next course of action for it. So, Astha, for those who may not know, could you first explain what exactly is a serological survey and how exactly is it conducted?
A serological survey is meant to check prevalence of disease in a population by detecting the presence of specific antibodies against the virus. So we have been conducting this study to understand how many people have developed antibodies against COVID-19 virus since July.
And basically, our understanding is that these people who have developed antibodies are essentially people who have already contracted COVID 19.
Contracted COVID-19 infection. These are also some of the asymptomatic people, which might not be in the group of people who were tested. But still, even after that, they have developed antibodies because they might have got infection from other people.
So recently, we came to know the initial findings of the fifth serological survey that was conducted in Delhi. And the findings reveal that over 50% people who were surveyed have developed antibodies against COVID 19. So, what do we know about how many people were surveyed for this, and what does this finding mean for Delhi?
So the Delhi government had surveyed 28,840 people in this exercise. This was the fifth zero surveillance we have carried out in Delhi. And the initial findings that we have received from the lab which had conducted the testing, it suggests that over 50% have developed antibodies. That means more than 14,000 people have already been infected with the virus. I'm talking about those who were actually surveyed during the process. So when we say that these people have developed antibodies, that means they have already caught the infection and they are at least now immune to catch the infection for at least 3 to 4 months. This is what the initial studies says, that antibodies last for 60 to 90 days.
So does this mean that, if you're saying that 50% people possibly have antibodies, does this mean that Delhi is close to what they call as herd immunity?
Scientists have been defining the parameters for herd immunity. Some says it's between 40 to 70%. Some says it is above 60%. So most of the experts believe that if 60% of the population or more than that has, acquired antibodies against the virus, then we are moving slowly toward achieving the herd immunity, as they call it. So this is one of a natural way of acquiring herd immunity. And the second process of moving towards herd immunity is, of course, the vaccination process that is already going on in the country.
So does this mean that people are potentially, safer to go out to, say, restaurants and malls and meet other people?
No, of course. Even if they have developed antibodies, we still know that it's only going to last for 60 to 90 days or maybe for 120 days. So the entire process of following the social distancing rules and, to wear mask and carry sanitizer has to continue even after if we have 60%. Until the time the entire population has been vaccinated or has developed antibodies, we should not let our guards down and we should keep following the social distancing behavior that we have been doing for the last 10 months.
And at this point, what do experts suggest should be the next course for action for the city?
Basically, this exercise is very helpful in, deciding the next course of action for the government in terms of the containment exercise that we are doing, in terms of the surveillance that we are doing. So this gives us a base that, where we stand right now and what is the status of the disease among Delhi's population. As of now, for Delhi government, it will be important to see how the urban and rural areas are behaving to this disease. So when we say that there will be a clear distinction of the data in the final report, there will be also a clear distinction of how many male have been infected with the disease, how many female have been infected with the disease. It will also give a clear picture of, how many cases have been there from urban areas and how many are there from rural areas. So then the plan has to be devised that where the containment strategy needs to be pulled up, where they need to take more action, and where, surveillance needs to be strong.
And also, right now, the COVID-19 vaccination drive is on. Do we know whether people who have already developed antibodies against COVID-19, whether they will qualify for the vaccine?
Yes, see, even those who have been infected with COVID-19, even experts have been saying that those who have been infected with the COVID-19 infection, they should go ahead and take the vaccination. So there's no problem with that. They should actually go ahead with the vaccination because it will give you a long-term effect as compared to, having antibodies and just waiting to not to get the vaccination. Vaccination is another way to, get protected from the disease for another few months.
And how is Delhi doing right now in terms of the number of active COVID patients it has?
So the number of cases have drastically gone down in Delhi. So yesterday we reported 96 cases, which is 96 daily case in a day, which is lowest in the last 10 months. So on April 30, we had reported 70 cases in a day, which was lowest at that time. So the number of cases are actively coming down. Almost 88% of our beds are lying vacant. And Delhi government is also adding relaxation to the hospital rules. Now more OPDs are being opened, IPDs are being opened, and the services for non-COVID patients are also being extended. Right now, we are doing pretty well in terms of the test and in the positivity rate because our daily positivity rate is also coming down. It's around 0.3% right now, which is really low.
And does this have to do with what the latest Sero survey indicates, that 50% of the population already has antibodies?
So it actually is correlated. So when we look at the number of cases and we look at the result of the Sero surveillance, it is also an indicative of what the number of cases are going right now. So in the time of November, if we look at the Sero surveillance study, there were less antibodies in the number of people that we had surveyed. But as the number of cases are coming down and more people have already been infected with the infection, so the presence of antibodies is more on that side.
These findings are initial. Is it possible that this number, the 50%, might change after some time?
No, that the number will not change. What we'll get more is a district-wise data and a data on urban-rural divide, gender division, and maybe those who were infected, what were the kind of diseases they were having, and what are the comorbidities they were having, those who had passed away with the disease. So only the detailed breakup we will get in the final report from the government.
And these serological surveys have been conducted a number of times in the past as well, right? And they're going to be more of those that will be conducted in the future. So how does this Sero survey compare with the previous ones? And, what is the relevance of conducting these surveys again and again?
So the first survey in Delhi was jointly carried out by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and National Center for Disease Control in July, in the end of June and first week of July, where antibodies had been detected in 23% of those who were surveyed. The sample size was around 23,000 at that time. Then the Delhi government decided to carry out a monthly Sero survey to understand how the antibodies are changing in the population. So we carried out survey in August last year, September and October. And after a gap of 2 months, the next survey was carried out in January. So the survey conducted in August showed a prevalence of 29.1%. The figure dropped to 25.1% in September. And then it stood at 25.5% in October. So as we speak to experts about this, that how important it is to carry out such exercises, they have been saying that, this exercise gives us robust data on how the disease is behaving. So it is important to understand the nature of the disease, and then we can actually plan out our surveillance activities. And then maybe the numbers may not be too close, but it can give us a rough idea, which for us, we can plan our future activities.
And next, we talk about IIM Calcutta. For the past few weeks, the faculty at the Indian Institute of Management in Calcutta is locked in an unprecedented standoff with its institute's director. The faculty alleges that the director, Anju Seth, has centralized powers in her hands and has taken over their role in administration and decision making. But the director is attributing these allegations to only a small group of individuals upset with her. But the situation has gotten to the point that the faculty has now approached the government. To understand the situation, our producer Joshua Thomas spoke to Ritika Chopra, who covers education for the newspaper. Here's Joshua and Ritika.
In your article, you mention a standoff between the faculty of IIM Calcutta and its director, Anju Seth. The faculty have now taken the drastic step of asking the government to intervene in this conflict. So what led to this power tussle, essentially?
While this may seem drastic and a bit sudden, when we spoke to the faculty members at the institute, they said that, we approached the government only after exhausting all recourses internally, that this was actually a long time coming because for about a year now, the teachers in the institute have been trying to communicate with the director. They claim that over the last 2 years, rather ever since she joined, there have been efforts to limit the role or remit of faculty bodies and the faculty committees in the administration and day-to-day decision-making of the institute. So overall, that's what their complaint is, that, look, the faculty, the teachers at IIM Calcutta, they've had this unique legacy of participating in the administration of the institute in day-to-day decision-making, and that is probably being diluted by the incumbent director. The faculty fears that most of the powers, decision-making powers in the institute are being centralized in the hands of the director.
So could you give us any kind of specific examples that the faculty have brought up as allegations against the director?
So, like I mentioned earlier, their complaint is essentially about the style of functioning of the director, which they have described, quote unquote, as arbitrary and discriminatory. But they have listed out a few specific complaints to illustrate what their problem is with the leadership. One, of course, as an example of how the faculty's role is being limited, they've said that, there is a doctoral research program committee. This committee deals with permissions for faculty who want to go and present their papers at international conferences abroad. But they're saying that this committee now is defunct for all practical purposes simply because the director insists that she wants to have a final say. When I asked them to elaborate on this, they said, look, she controls all the funding powers. So the ultimate say actually technically does lie with her. Earlier, the director, or rather her predecessors, have never objected to the recommendation to the Doctoral Research Program Committee. They felt that, look, this committee is made up of subject experts. And since the director cannot possibly know everything about every subject, the director would go with the recommendation of this committee. But the faculty claims that she's now sort of not acting on the recommendations, and there's been a drastic drop in the number of faculty members who have been abroad to present papers at international conferences over the last 2 years. Another complaint that the teachers have, even under the regulations which the institute is drafting under the IIM Act, for the benefit of the listeners, basically the IIM Act came in roughly about 3 years ago. And this act gives the IIMs unprecedented autonomy in decision-making. Basically, the act promises that there will be no interference from the government, whether it's appointing your own leadership or any other decision, academic decision that you have to make. So under this act, all the IIMs are supposed to draft their own regulations. Each IIM is expected to have its own regulations, which will oversee the administration of their institute. So under this regulation, the faculty feels that the regulations are again trying to reduce the academic council's remit, and that earlier the faculty was able to elect its representatives to the board of governors. There are 2 representatives of the faculty on the board. And now under the new regulations, which is being drafted by the board itself, of which the director is a member, the new regulations state that only one of the two representatives will be elected by the faculty, while the second one will be appointed by the chairperson. These are just two examples.
So all this culminated in them writing a letter to the government asking them to intervene in this whole issue. So how did the government respond to the letter?
This letter was addressed to the Higher Education Secretary, Amit Khare. There has been no official response of the government to the letter. But while working on this story, when we spoke to officers in the ministry to understand if the government is acting on some of the concerns flagged by the teachers, frankly, it seems like there won't be much of an intervention from the government. The justification for that is at a time when the NDA government is advocating autonomy for practically all the institutes on the lines of what the IIMs have been given under the IIM Act. It would seem to be at odds for the government to actually come in and start interfering in the internal matters of an IIM. So under the new national education policy, this document promises autonomy on the lines of what the IIMs have already under the new IIM Act. So the government feels that that would probably send out the wrong message. And our sources in the ministry tell us that the Higher Education Secretary has met the chairperson of the institute, that's Sri Krishna Kulkarni, and the director Anju Seth, and asked them to try and resolve this internally, because the officers in the ministry feel that, frankly, most of the issues that have been flagged by the faculty are not issues which can really be resolved at the central government level. This has to happen internally within the institute, and that's what the government has advised the leadership. I mean, going by the looks of it, the stalemate stands as it is. There's no further development on that front.
Okay, and also how has the director Anju Seth responded to all these allegations?
So over the last 1.5 months since that letter to the government first surfaced, there has been no official response from the director. It took us almost 10 days to actually convince her to issue a response to our detailed questionnaire on the allegations and complaints of the faculty. Her official response to us was that, look, the administration at IIM Calcutta is committed to uphold, the IIM Act, and that we here are trying to foster a culture of transparency, accountability, and this may cause some discomfort to, quote unquote, a small group of individuals, because they probably have a problem with her trying to foster a culture of transparency and accountability in the institute. And she's obviously said that all of these allegations and stories are baseless, and that she, along with her teammates, are committed to ensure that IIM Calcutta continues to tread the path of excellence. But I would like to mention here what she calls a small group of teachers isn't exactly small. This letter was signed by 61 teachers out of roughly 80. That's more than 75% of your permanent faculty members, and that's a sizable chunk. Actually, that's the majority of your teachers.
Also, in the article, there is a quote that you got from the chairman, Sri Krishna Kulkarni, and a professor from IIM. What did they say about the whole issue?
So the chairperson, again, his response was saying that, look, we're not going to discuss the institute's internal matters in the public domain, and that we are committed to the institute and to its best interests, and that the allegations are baseless. That's what Mr. Sri Krishna Kulkarni wrote in response to our detailed questionnaire. This standoff actually is unprecedented because IIMs actually are apolitical campuses. There are no sort of associations. In fact, under Dr. Seth, this is the first time that IIM Calcutta, and any IIM for that matter in the past, has never had a faculty association. So it was under her term that the teachers got together and registered an association. When we spoke to them about it, they said that that's because we felt our voice wasn't being heard within the institute. So we formed an association. We're trying to kind of raise our concerns collectively now with the central government. Never have faculty members of an IIM actually approached the government and sought their intervention and complained about their director. So it's unprecedented, and it's being watched pretty keenly within the IIM community. And we did reach out to some of the members of the administration of different IIMs and senior faculty members to find out what is it that they think of this entire confrontation. And they basically told us, look, you have to see this against the backdrop of the act, obviously, because a lot of these changes that are being brought in by the leadership, it is on account of the regulations that are being drafted under the IIM Act. They said that the other thing that you should keep in mind, that why is it the faculty is that riled up? That's because they said that unlike even IIM Ahmedabad or Bangalore, unlike any other IIM Calcutta has had this unique culture of faculty-driven administration, where teachers actually pride themselves for being pretty involved in how the institute is run, how recruitments are made, I mean, one of the professors, a senior professor at IIM Ahmedabad, told me that the faculty representatives on the board at IIM Ahmedabad, we do take inputs of the teachers, but these representatives are not elected. But when you look at IIM Calcutta, they have been electing both their representatives to the board for years now. That's how involved the teachers are. Now, to change that kind of culture all too suddenly without bringing the stakeholders on board will obviously lead to disruption, will lead to confrontation. If IIM Calcutta has had a unique culture, maybe they should try and preserve that. And if any changes are proposed, then maybe the leadership should try and make an effort to maybe meet with the teachers, explain their point of view, that they need to take the stakeholders along. So that's how this is being seen within the larger community of other IIMs.
And in the end, we talk about India and China. Yesterday, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar admitted that the events in eastern Ladakh last year have brought the relationship between India and China at crossroads, and that the choices made will have profound repercussions not just for two nations, but for the world. Speaking at the 13th All India Conference of China Studies, Jaishankar said that the events in Ladakh not only signaled disregard for commitments on minimizing troops, but also showed willingness to breach peace. These remarks come days after Indian and Chinese troops were involved in a fresh clash in Nakula in Sikkim on the 20th of January. Sources had mentioned that in this clash, some troops sustained minor injuries during a brawl, and that the incident happened as Indian troops stopped a Chinese patrolling party in the region. On January 24, military commanders from India and China had met for the 9th round of talks to discuss a possible solution to the nearly 9-month-long border standoff in eastern Ladakh. And with around 50,000 troops deployed in the region, along with additional artillery, tanks, and air defense assets. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and as always was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. If you like this show, then you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.